So I've just succeeded in uploading this this YouTube playlist for Charlie on the 10th of November 2024, and what I'm going to do now, I've shared it to Ken here, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you a slideshow of the images which came from the video we made yesterday. So that's here in the Nero, and I'm going to save it as save it in today's folder, which is the 10th of November, and we'll call it Dbug 241110. Okay, darling, and it's time to take Charlie out for a walk. So what you'll see in a minute is these images here, like that, with the recording from the phone call I had with Ken yesterday. And then once that slideshow is finished, we'll then see how I made them like this. So I think we want to put a zoom in here and put a crossfade on there. Okay.
This is after half an hour already.
I know. Okay.
Charlie's crying.
Yeah,
Crying now.
let's go. Yeah, that's what we'll do. Oh, it's not here.
I'll keep that saying.
That's from yesterday. So the soundtrack you're going to hear, apart from this soundtrack which we made today on the 11th, is the soundtrack from a phone call with Ken yesterday. Okay. Pollinated. Oh, it's not here. give Ken a call. Yeah, just a quick call.
You use my phone call, huh?
Yeah, on the WhatsApp.
Oh, I see.
I think we checked the spelling of pomegranate before. Pomegranate. Pomegranate. That's it. Right. Yeah, can we have the WhatsApp then?
Why you talk about pomegranate?
It's called the love apple in mythology. It's the apple.
There's Ken.
You guys can. Okay.
There's Ken. You can realize it.
Which one is it?
This one is yeah. This one is Ken, yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't look like him though.
It is Ken.
Okay.
Why do you think you do not like him?
This picture doesn't look like him at all.
It is Ken, yeah.
Oh, he's got a hat on, has he?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hi, Ken. This is Doug calling on Saturday afternoon at about 3:30, and I'm using my wife's phone because my phone's a very stupid phone, which is the way I like it, and I can't do things like WhatsApp on my phone. And your friend Charlie doesn't have Facebook, so the only way we can do it probably is using my wife's phone. So we have to be a bit careful with using my wife's phone, but I think we can do it like this. Maybe ring me back. Okay, speak to you soon. Bye.
Why don't you just call him then?
Well, because it's easier for him to call back if he's happy. Just correct this. So he should be phoning back.
Yeah, it is Ken.
He's wearing a hat, that's why. So did you get the message I just got? Okay, so that's on the WhatsApp. So we can't really harass my wife, with our brain, but sometimes it's useful to use the WhatsApp. So if you want to give Charlie that number for my wife's phone, and he could call me tomorrow sometime or something. He's too shy. Yeah. You said he's like your old friend. Right. Yeah. Did you kind of talk about it before? Yeah. Does he? Right. Wow. So it doesn't sound like he needs any advice from me then. Right, to put your two painter friends together. Yeah. Yeah. What did you say at the end of our chat yesterday? You said that you're not well. Are you all right? What's going on? Uh-huh. Isn't that linked as porphyria? Has anybody mentioned porphyria to you? You haven't heard? Have you heard of porphyria? Ah, okay. So they thought that that was the illness which George III had, but nowadays they don't accept that. Nowadays they just say, "Oh, it was just bipolar." But it's to do with potassium levels. You should look it up. It's porphyria, like Pophyiria or something like that. Yeah, I know because my sister-in-law from my brother's first marriage has it, and her life has been, you know, very difficult as a result. So she's been involved with something called the Porphyria Society to kind of raise awareness about it. But it has very similar effects as bipolar in that you can get inspired. I mean, on the good side, on the upside. So are you having a wave of inspiration at the moment? Good, good. You don't think that's linked to your potassium levels? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Okay. You're feeling terrible. Are you? Yeah. How many years ago was that now? Quite a while. 14 years ago. Right. In a couple of weeks' time, 27. Okay, let's make a note of that. Darling, make a note. Ken's going to be 64 on the 27th. Oh, we know it already, apparently. She's very good at keeping all these things in her calendar. Mm. Yeah. How did you two meet then? Did you meet in London? In Ilkley, right. And then he moved back to Ireland. Well, Galway's a beautiful place to live, isn't it? I'd like it. Yeah, I'd love that. I live in the middle of nowhere, but that's in a different sense. Living in Ipswich, the black hole of Suffolk, the cultural black hole of Suffolk. I like that idea that physicist was saying that if you push too much energy into your experiment in too small a space of space-time, then all you manage to do is create a black hole. That was quite an intriguing idea. I never thought of that. Yeah. So that's the limit. That's the limit of what we can see. Yeah, that's another kind of the event horizon of the black hole. But I don't think he's actually saying that that's what they do at CERN at the moment. They don't create black holes in CERN at the moment, do they? Or do they create very small ones? I don't know. Do you remember when they were discovering the Higgs boson on the internet? You know the way it is on the internet. Everybody was saying it's going to destroy the world. Yeah. Well, I think we just forget about the internet now. I mean, it's been fun, but we don't really need it, do we? I mean, I've got plenty of other things to do than waste time on the internet. Mm. Yeah, that's right. Reading and writing, and walking my dog in the fields, and doing music and painting. I mean, these are the things I found that are fun most of the time. Yeah, yeah. I can't sit there and read a PDF off the screen in the way I can read a book. I just can't do it. What I tend to do is get the computer to read it to me. Usually, just like a computer voice, you know, or if I want to find something out. So, well, recently I was interested in this business of the central channel and the two channels on either side, which is a very common sort of teaching in Hindu and in Shiva worship and in the kind of Vajrayana that I follow. Yeah, and somebody pointed me to a PDF. But I'd actually have to print it out. And that would be almost like buying a book, wouldn't it? Printing out 400 pages. Um, I think there would be a really good little corner shop business for a print shop just to print out books for people. You know, a bit like the kind of you used to have a baker that would bake bread for the whole street. A bit. Yeah, they still do it, don't they? Yeah. Mm. Or in the future, when you have things which are designed in this way, rather than ship all of this stuff around with these distribution centres and everything, you could just send the design, and the little corner shop would just print it out for you. Not a book, I mean an object. You know, out of some sort of gunky stuff that they have, which they can just make. I don't know. Yeah. You know what I mean? So then there wouldn't be all of this business of shipping everything around. You would just send the design, and then they would make it locally. Mm. Okay. Yeah. Well, now we've established that's allowed. So send it to the WhatsApp. And anything else where you and me have got a Facebook, which I suppose we're discussing. We don't really like using Facebook, but it's the best way to talk to friends. That's right. Well, I remember wondering aloud whether Bomberg, his great mythical master, would have approved of what he did, because Bomberg died in 1952, and Cliff was just sort of starting out. And then Cliff went on and carried on hacking away at it for the rest of his life. But I remember him saying, I wonder what if Bomberg could have seen what I did, whether he would have given it his blessing or not. And I'm in the same position now with Cliff. Although I did have, I had a long relationship with Cliff, from meeting him when he was about about 55, 56, I suppose he was. So young, much younger than we are now, right up until he died when he was over 100. But you know, the last 20 years maybe you can discount because he went blind and his dementia. But you know, so the last painting I showed him, you know, in fact, it was very obscure. It was a copy. It was the beginning of a copy of Titian, um, and I don't know why I was doing that particularly, but it wasn't. And he said, "Oh, you know, the figures are too obscure. I can't see them." In fact, the painting was like that, but it was also because he was blind. And I thought about ways that he could have carried on painting, although he was blind. You know, you could paint with sandpaper of different grades. You know, and you could ascribe different grades of sandpaper for different colours or hues, couldn't you? Yeah, and I wonder there must be certainly sculpture. A blind person could carry on making sculpture because they would be reading the form with their hands, wouldn't they? Yeah, yeah. Like Beethoven went deaf, but it didn't really hold him back. In many ways, maybe it helped him as an artist. You know, um, yeah. Yeah, no, I don't know much about anything either, but there's a something or other testament that he wrote when he was despairing because his hearing was going. Because I have a friend who's a musician who's going deaf, and so I shared this with him, and so you know with this you know it's like, shall I go on? And then he decides I will go on, you know, despite the difficulties. And really, that's what Bomberg was teaching Cliff, and Cliff teaching me, is that you know the creative event or the creative idea, it comes about through struggle. It doesn't come about through being very clever. So as you get older, you get all sorts of cleverness in your hand or in your eye or whatever, you know. And I'm very interested in process, and you know, many ways I'm much more interested in the kind of finding out how to do things than actually in doing them. So I've you know put a lot of effort in sorting out the processes here in my little council flat. But yeah, he's interested in process. But the thing is, what Cliff said is that you're trying to find out something. So it doesn't really matter what you're trying to find out, so long as you don't know the answer. And it's that struggle and that effort. So in drawing, you might be able to you might be trying to find out how a shadow, you know, folds over the, you know, the curve of her hip if you're, you know, painting or drawing from a model or something. But you've got to have that quest to find something out. And he would contrast this art activity, as he called it, with craft, because in craft, a craftsman is repeating himself and doing it over and over again and getting it more perfect and knowing more and more exactly what he's doing and how he's doing it. And a lot of people think that that's what artists are like, but in fact it's the opposite. And so whatever idea you have, even if it's some stupid idea about process, so long as it gets you involved in a struggle, then there's a chance that something will come out. But all the way along, especially as you get older, you have more facility and you've seen more stuff, the chance is that you will settle for something that isn't really the created idea, that's a fake, And you'll always settle for that fake because it's comforting, you've seen it before. Whereas if it was a created idea, I'm just kind of paraphrasing Cliff, and I think he gets this from Bomberg. If you did recognise it, then it's something you've seen before. So therefore, you haven't created it. You're just doing a pastiche. And the master, the master isn't in any different. Like you're the master, right? The master. I'm not telling you anything. The master is no different from the student in this respect. He doesn't know what the fuck he's doing either. The only difference is that the master has seen a lot more. You know, in this lifetime, he's lived longer, he's seen more stuff, so he's less likely to be fooled and say, "Oh, wow, this is it. This is really fantastic. I've never seen this before." And the master will come to the student and say, "No, you're just ripping off Velasco. You're ripping off Bacon. You know, and you can go ahead and become a second-rate so-called fake artist if you want. you might make a very successful living at it, you know, pay lots of taxes and be a good fellow, but you're not an artist, you know. And that was the harsh teaching that I got hit with when I was, you know, in the height of my teenage pomp, you know, about the time when I met you, you know, and everything I did was an ego trip. Everything got knocked back. No, that's not it. That's not it. It seemed an impossible riddle I couldn't solve. But one thing I did know, and I'll stop here, Ken, is that I loved the man. You know, I love my teacher, and that's what I find in the Vajrayana, because it's devotion to the Guru, which is the only saving thing that, you know, that's the only thing that can save you, really. Yeah, and he can see YouTube, and that wouldn't he wouldn't have to feel shy about that. Mm. Well, what's coming? I have no confidence in the project itself. I mean, that's all coming from you. But along the way, you see, in between those videos, I'm using the camera to take lots of detailed shots of the form. So that's why I'm not kind of just filling in the shape of a door, you know, like you were painting a real door. Because in my sort of uncertainty about what I'm doing, I thought there was, you know, it's sort of tentative. There's a shape here, and I'm just kind of placing, you know, the colour there, and then I'm stopping, and then I'm photographing it, and so they're quite active to me. I've got 50 odd details of what I did yesterday, and you see, then I can. I mean, I'm happy to show Charlie this sort of process. I'd love to have a studio with assistants, and I would definitely. It's very teachable, this, because it's quite mechanical, and it's just a part of the processes that I've developed. But it comes with a warning that don't think that this is art necessarily. This is just, you know. But you see, having got a digital image into the computer, I can then put it through lots of filters, and I get loads of change the colours, change the black to white and the white to black. So 20 years ago or more, I thought, well, surely digital image processing is going to open up a whole new realm of possibilities for artists. I'm not really sure that's true. I think you could do just the same with a, you know, if you fought 40,000 years ago with a charcoal stick and, you know, on making a cave painting in the, you know, in the candlelight. You know, I don't think art technique. And anyway, whatever gets an artist excited, whatever gets your mojo, is good, because but it's usually something stupid, and then you get involved in the struggle, and then it's out of the struggle that something amazing can happen. So I got lost in the computer for 20 years or more, because it's endless how many times you can edit the picture, you know. And I've done thousands and thousands of edits of these, mostly based on original paintings or drawings, as you've seen them anyway. And they're meaningless to me, because um, they'd only be useful if I then took them as prototypes and made paintings or drawings from them. You know, as something on the screen. You know, I've tried showing it to people. Nobody is interested. Why should they be? It doesn't have any value. It's not marketable. So I'm in the process now of trying to get this stuff, and literally it's tens of thousands of images, so-called images, off the screen onto canvases. So that's, you know, that's what I'm doing with the rest of my life. But then, you know, I started with Cliff when I was 10, so I'm not recommending, you know, anybody follow this path. But I would love in China, and I talk about it with my wife a lot, to have a studio and a system, and have enough, you know, financial backing. Just using a lot of, you know, physical then sometimes, like Charlie, inevitably, you think, well, it's all just another rubbish. I'm just totally deluded person. But I don't feel like that really, Ken. Honestly, I don't really suffer from depression now. Because I think I really benefited a lot from, from the teachings. The Bodhisattva way is really what it's about for me, and so there's no reason to be self-indulgent and feel sorry for yourself. Whatever hardship you have, it only serves to make your practice stronger. I mean, it's a fantastic resource that you have. I was reading St. Paul's book of the Philippians, letter to the Philippians this morning, and he's saying something like that. Well, there speaks the master. Yeah. When you feel absolutely terrible, I mean, that does happen still, but I wouldn't call that depression. I mean, it's just like something knocks you down. I'll lie on the sofa. I call it the Deathly Hallows from Harry Potter, and it's just so awful. It's what you were talking about. But the thing is, I know I just lie down, and after a little while, it passes over. Which, oh, that's it. Yeah, that's what you do too. You just say okay, and you just collapse, and then miracle of miracles, a little while later, you get up. It's amazing. And also by giving it a name, I think, oh, okay, I got the. I usually say to my wife, "Oh, darling, I'm in the Deathly Hallows," and she says, "It's all right, it's all right. It's just Americans are destroying your brain, and this is what it's like for me every day." Churchill's Black Dog, yeah. So he names it, yeah. And then when it comes up, you say, "I know you. I've seen you before." Yeah. Churchill's Black Dog, yeah. But if you can treat everybody you meet as the guru, of course I'm not there, but I'm there with you anyway. Om Ken Soha. We are.
The eternal, basically. So we're infinite sense organs of God, basically.
Wow.
Which I quite like the idea of. But there's all these so many little feelers of God, just and everyone's got a different perspective from every single trillions of angles every second. And it's mind blowing when you think about it. God reaching out like that with all these little minions and animals and everything, all looking out on His world. I'm using Jesus as a pronoun, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And it's all that data coming in, because He's so hungry for data, and it's all, being sucked in by this, God deity figure, and it's just crazy. But even the ants and viruses and everything, they're all accumulating data and on every bloody planet, and it's just so vast, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing stuff. Yeah, but we do a little part, don't we, and try not to get too down. But brains are annoying sometimes, aren't they?
I did, going back to Charlie, I did talk about Francis Bacon in an earlier video. Maybe I didn't share that with you. In particular, I think he was talking in that interview with David Sylvester about how a canvas will get too loaded and he'll have to throw it away, because he liked this effect when you kind of dry brush over the texture of the canvas. That was very suggestive to him. It's the form. and the moment the kind of the hills and the valleys of the canvas texture are filled with paint, he couldn't have that sort of subtlety. I mean, that's very sort of refined, very sort of painterly, sort of refined, scumbling sort of idea.
Yeah.
But I wonder if Charlie's had that kind of experience.
He's quite good at sort of innovating. He did the picture of Shane McGowan painting, and then it's sort of full face, but he's staring out out of the frame, if you like, of the canvas, and he's got a cigarette. But he wanted to create the smoke in a sort of more ethereal way, and he couldn't do it with the brush, so he got something like a tea strainer, I think it was, or not tea strainer, a colander, and I think he sprayed paint through it to create this sort of smoky thing. I don't know if that's a common thing to do, but he either worked it out or read it somewhere, and it looks great.
Well, when I worked as a commercial artist, they did use spray guns, on the big canvases, the big cloths that they used in the theatre and in the opera, and there were 2 or 3 artists, senior artists in the department who were quite skillful at that. But when I came back from Portugal in my horse box, one of those 2 senior artists who basically spent his whole life working for that company, he came out to see what I'd been doing when I was in Spain and Portugal in the horse box, and he was so jealous, because I was in my, coming up to my late 20s, but I was, thanks to Cliff probably, and it wasn't it wasn't a straight path by any means, but I was actually striking out and trying to be an artist, whereas he had compromised and become a commercial artist. So he was constantly rendering ideas that the designers brought in. They might bring in something like, what was his name? Was it John Napier? He used to work for Cameron Mackintosh. So a lot of these shows that I worked on, this was around sort of 1988, 89, that sort of time. And he would literally bring in something the size of a postage stamp as an idea and say, I want your team to blow this up to a 60-foot, I don't know, like Paul McCartney's world tour, or the Rolling Stones, or Tina Turner. These were like £3 million contracts this company had to do the stage scenery for these shows. Like Rolling Stones, I think it was called Steel Wheels, and they get a designer and they have all these funky ideas, but they literally bring in these tiny little designs, and then these senior artists knew how, like you say, to square it up and square up the cloth, and then people like me, little minnows, you called us, in our hungry years, well, we're still hungry. Anyway, we would go around and trace with a piece of charcoal each square by square, and anyway, you can get a lot of these amazing soft smoky effects with a spray gun, but I just fell in love with, as a teenager, with Van Gogh and Monet and Cézanne. And the way what I'm doing in that video is I'm using a loaded brush. I've got the consistency of the paint. I've taken a bit of trouble to get that right. If I was teaching somebody else, if I had an apprentice, I've taken a good, 20 minutes to mix that paint so that it's that sort of consistency. And then I've loaded the brush. And then the job's done, really, Also, and this is to counter the kind of, the tendency to become very crafty and skillful. I think it's good advice to use the biggest brush you possibly can. It also makes everything happen faster. So there's a story about Van Gogh and Gauguin, and they went out painting together. And while Gauguin made one painting, you can see these paintings too. Van Gogh made 3 or 4, and so and they fell out because and Gauguin said, Van Gogh keeps on interfering when I'm working, saying no, you shouldn't be doing that. He likes my. He keeps on admiring my paintings, but he won't stop bloody interfering when I'm working. Because Van Gogh is saying, why are you pussyfooting around? Get on with it, So I mean, I wouldn't go so far as Auerbach and Kossoff and, and even their students who used to just use huge amounts of paint, so it would just be dripping off. Do you remember we had one show at the Glazebrookes Gallery, which was like that? And the paint was actually travelling down. It was behind a piece of glass or perspex, but the oil paint was actually travelling down in the course of the exhibition because it was so thick. And Bomberg said to one of the students, we are actually painters. We're not. What was it? What the word he used? I mean, you're not. I've forgotten this quote now. It wasn't like you're not using a sculptural material, or it's not mud, it's paint. But then Cliff would say that a painter is someone who didn't play with their shit enough when they were young, so when they were babies. Well, yeah, I mean, I think you can. What I remember, and this is quite young, is that you can actually scrape away an area. It helps if you're still in the flow, because I found, especially when I was young and I wasn't very skillful, to go back on a dry painting, like there was a hand, a portrait I did where there was a hand, and I repainted it in a different kind of paint, so the oil paint is more glossy, and I really shouldn't have touched it. The original hand, however, funny I thought it was probably much more consequent at the time with the drawing. But, some months later, when this painting was back at Radley, I tried to repaint that hand. And that really annoys me when I see that. So, I won't. But what I'd like to do, if it was still wet especially, is to get a palette knife and scrape that right off. So you can always go back with oil paint, scrape everything off, and make it, and draw that area again. That's very possible. And even get some white spirit and kind of wash it right back to the ground. And Cliff used to show me how you can use newspaper to pull back some of the layers. It's not perfect technique, but you can get back to what you destroyed earlier, because he says you're always destroying the good stuff, because your ego's always tripping you up and always sending you back to something that's mediocre and not not good enough. So yeah, he was a friend of my grandmother's. So he'd married in 1952, sometime around then. He'd moved to Sweden to live. They'd had a couple of exhibitions in Stockholm, and him with some of his friends from the Borough Group, and he met Lisa, who was a Swedish designer and artist, and so he and it was, the conditions were good in Sweden. There were unions in the factories which had a budget for buying art, things like that. Sweden was very socialist after the war, and they hadn't been pulled to pieces by the Nazis. So they were wealthy and they had a lot of industry, but the industry, did things like that. So there was it was a good conditions for contemporary artists.
That's amazing. I never knew that.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I mean, little things like that, and it's a little film, mentioning it in passing, that kind of thing really sort of floats Charlie's face.
I find it quite good actually when I'm working to have the camera rolling and to talk. Actually, I find it quite helpful, because I got lots of this flow of ideas and pressured speech sort of thing in my brain, but actually it stops me from becoming too self-conscious about the work. So I'm so busy talking away in a funny sort of way, my brain is disengaged and my body can just get on much more naturally with that sort of sense of flow and lack of self-consciousness. The moment you become self-conscious, then you'll notice that the chi, the energy that's contained in mark making or in speech or in poetry or anything really, when you're writing, when you're in the flow, and then you become self-conscious and you start thinking about how someone will react when they read it in a self-conscious sort of way, or you start becoming too pretentious, or you know what I mean. That's the killer, self-consciousness.
Yeah, because when you dropped a little bit of paint off the brush and you were like, oh, I really didn't mean to do that, and it was really so human, but so natural, and it came across really nicely on camera.
Oh, I had to go back with some white spirit and clean that off the slab. Yeah. Yeah, well, Cliff, Cliff always used to talk about the planned accident. Well, that wasn't the planned accident because that didn't make any difference to the image, but yeah, yeah.
But no, it just makes you, like you. I think Charlie thinks all these artists was, so he knows they're flawed, but in terms of their skills, and they might not do things like that.
Oh, but Ken, you shouldn't sell me to him as an artist. I'm not. You know me. I'm not a. I don't have any standing. I don't have any social status or success or anything like that.
No, he knows that.
Yeah.
But it's not that. It's just that the process and what you've been through, and knowing Cliff, all this stuff.
I consider my dog to be a greater artist than I am. I do, really. When he was a puppy, he used to chew things up and arrange them. It was just these wonderful art installations all over our little flat. It was fantastic. That's yeah. Maybe these two Charlies are all the same anyway. Could be. They're all emanations of Maitreya Buddha, aren't they? That's right. That's all. No, not at all. But that's very interesting. I don't remember you ever saying that before. Yeah, I tell you, actually, it's maybe it's not that surprising because that was when I had the studio in Brixton, and I was in the National Gallery, and I did a drawing in the gallery. Like that video of Auerbach you showed me, where he's standing in front of some great European painting, and he's got a little sketchbook. A bit like that. So I was in the National Gallery, and it was the what's it called? When Jesus goes into the temple, and it's by El Greco, and anyway, and that's it. Yeah. So you can look. That was the exact painting. And what's interesting about it is mannerist. So the classical idea was you always based the composition on a upright standing triangle with the point at the top, and in the mannerist style, that like people like El Greco turned that upside down, so you've got the downward pointing triangle, and it was from that drawing that I then started what I have always called the trial, because I was thinking about the Judgment of Solomon. I don't know why, it's not really in the painting, but and then it just ended up being the trial, like I'm just trying something out or something. But it was the major work in Mark Brown's big house on St Saviour's Road, and together with a clockmaker, I rented one of the rooms as a studio. And Fiona Banner was in the next door room. Do you remember her? She then became quite famous in the young British artists scene because she went to Goldsmiths, and so you just caught the end of that sort of thing. And her boyfriend was you remember him? Yeah, Jeff Dyer. Yeah. Yeah, and Jeff Dyer knew John Berger, and John Berger knew Cliff. Yeah, so that was that connection. Yeah, Fiona Banner. At that time, she was painting in the next door room. She was painting, but she was applying to Goldsmiths at the time, and she was painting seagulls of all things. But then once she'd been through the sausage factory at Goldsmiths, she started making text art. So that's what she's famous for. Yeah, you could look her up. Oh yeah, you would have. Yeah, sure. That's right. Yeah.
literally, you know,
Well, he was. I don't. Yeah, he was. They were a couple at the time. I don't know what happened to them.
yeah,
Yeah.
I do remember, yeah. That's really interesting, yeah.
And John Berger was still alive then. You know, I mean, he wasn't a figure from history at that time. You know,
Yeah.
like we are right now. We're still alive. It's amazing, isn't it? Really.
It gets so long, yeah.
Yeah. But I've been writing. I had an extraordinary 6 days in which I wrote an epic poem, and I'm busy typing it up today, and I will share it with you at some point. But honestly, this whole thing poured out of me in 6 days, and it's only the first act. So, and before I move on with it, I'm taking my time. So, so I definitely wish you well for your writing, and
I'm writing in longhand because
yeah, yeah, me too. I'm writing on sheets of paper with a pencil. Yeah.
it just seems to flow better like that.
Good.
My late friend Ray gave me a Mont Blanc pen, which is a plastic, beautiful, expensive, but really gorgeous piece.
These things matter because these things are how you establish a comfortable relationship with your, in witchcraft, in Wicca, in a nice positive sense of Wicca, they talk about the three selves, like they do in all of the esoteric teachings, really. But the talking self in Wicca, they call it the talking self, and then they talk about the younger self. I think this is also something you can research. But the younger self is cooperating with you when you have that flow going. The younger self is managing all the subconscious, all the stuff below the conscious level. The talking self has got all the answers because it's able to put them into words. But we rely on that younger self to do lots of, that's our own little version of the minions, running around. I read an amazing book called The Secret Science of Miracles when I was in that house in St. Saviour's Road, actually. And it was written, I don't know when, in the 20th century, before the Second World War anyway, I'm pretty sure. And it was, somebody had gone out to Hawaii and he was working for Kodak. Anyway, he got to know the kahuna, the local Hawaiian spiritual, you heard of them, have you?
Yeah, I know what it is.
And they had this teaching, and they called it. They didn't call it the younger self, but they had this image of a well, like a well where you pull water up from the ground, and you got all of these strings going down into the well, and then have we talked about this before? At the end of the strings, it's attached to something that looks a bit like a bunch of grapes, and you can't go down there, but your lower self, who's your servant, goes down there and follows these pieces of string. Of course, they all get in a tangle, don't they? Right? But eventually, he or she will find this. I think it's a he. Will find this bunch of grapes, and then among the bunch of grapes, the exact grape that you asked for, and then we'll send it up to you, and it just suddenly pops into your mind. So when you put things down there, if you can do it in a systematic way so these strings don't get all tangled. Anyway, this servant character we have in this lower self or this younger self loves to play with us, and it, of course, is very much active during your dream work and in your emotional waking life. When you get triggered and you become emotional, it's all there. But when you are in that creative flow, so that's why I think the paper and the pen that you choose, all this matters. What color is the ink? Blue. Yeah, yeah. So blue on white paper. That's traditionally what the lower self likes. But I use pencil on white paper for this for this stuff, and then just for sort of rough notes, I use blue ink.
It's frank. I'm just a bit like you about canvas. I'm daubing bits of text here and there, and kind of sort of eventually put them together. That's kind of how I've always written.
Yeah, and it's starting as a short story.
Yeah, it's about. It's a Trump thing. I've come off all the internet. I felt that we're living in a post-apocalyptic world already, but so I kind kind of I was thinking about this, but I thought someone in a post-apocalyptic world, culture is not important, though it's not priority anymore. But I thought that was very sad. So I've got potentially two guys, walking through a post-apocalyptic zone. Imagine they're all grey and horrendous, a bit like that film The Road. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but
Yeah,
a bit like that.
like The Road.
Monochrome world kind of thing, but they're heading towards a place where they're both love film basically, and they're headed to a place where they know that, and this is based on my uncle because he's got a little cinema in his basement.
Yeah.
And I thought it would have been protected from the fallout. So they're kind of travelling hundreds of miles by foot to go to this place to finally watch these DVDs that they hadn't seen for 3 years. And it's a question of what the DVDs are going to be, and along the way they're discussing, the various merits of different directors and what have you along the way. But in a subtle way, it's not didactic thing particularly. But it all comes together.
When did you start writing it?
Only a couple of days ago, yeah.
And when did you have the idea?
I think day before yesterday, I think.
Right,
Yeah.
it's super fresh. Great.
Yeah. So, I just started writing it yesterday.
Well, I feel very privileged to be on this journey with you, Ken.
Yeah, well, thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's going to go in tangents, obviously, but that's the basic framework, and it's a question of when they get there, is the DVD player they're aiming towards, is it there? That's one question, I suppose. And, is there any power, and will the DVDs work? All this kind of stuff.
That's right. So a story needs to have suspense. It needs to have some questions.
Yeah.
So the reader, let's call it the reader, wants to know what's going to happen next. So turn the page and find out what's happened next. And
it's a bit of a Schrodinger's cat with when they get there, will it be? Will the DVD player be alive?
Yeah.
Or does it matter? Or will I even reveal that at the end?
That's right. So you like Shakespeare or Hitchcock, you're going to be like a master of suspense, and people will, go because they will become hypnotized because of this the strength of this urge to know what happens next. Then you get lost, and then they get to the end of the book and they feel so sad it's over, and then they want to buy your next one.
Well, that's it. And then they're going to sell the film right to the Jim Jarmusch.
That's right, and then.
Set you up in a studio.
That's right, and then you will, then you'll send your anti-fascist hit squad to kidnap Trump, and you'll have him in your basement as your gimp, and you'll show him movies while the world burns. Yeah, like Clockwork Orange. Yeah, and he'll come out, and he won't be orange anymore.
I was dreaming of sort of, when I saw the Harris was going to win, thinking it's going to be all unicorns and puppies and kittens. And I woke up in the morning and thought, oh my God, someone's killed my unicorn.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. When we finish, I'm going to send you to the WhatsApp. I'll just send you this little video.
Yeah. I've got to take my Charlie for his walk now. It's getting dark. Lovely to speak to you, Ken. You're always the master. Yeah. Love to your mum and all your family. Om Ken So Ha Hum Pe.
Right, I'll see you. Speak to you soon.
Yeah. Love you, Ken. Bye. Whoosh.